But his whole discussion is not about coastal visions, but it's about future visions. And he says that there are generic ones which say that the future um, will be somewhat better, but more of the same. The dystopian life will suck visions, atomized individuals, that Western capitalism is going to sort of become dysfunctional, environmental degradation, totalitarianism, world war, and so on. And then there are utopian visions, communism, socialism, whatever, many different ones. And even some of the utopian visions are religious. You know, they're second coming. There are things about, you know, sort of Christian visions or Buddhist visions and Hindu visions and others. And then there is a transhumanist optimism, which is a kind of synergetic view based on nanotechnology and AI, which is artificial intelligence, which is sort of human beings are going to become less important as we bring online all the technology possible. There are differences. We don't really know what the future is. And so without knowing exactly how to deal with this, visions are based on beliefs and on ideological preferences. And visions are heavily influenced by cliches about the future. Put a little circle on it. There is current optimism or pessimism to some extent determines these predictions. Okay? So who thinks about the future? Science fiction writers, futurologists, individual futurists, corporate research centers, think tanks, transhumanist thinkers, and others. And we've got a little term here called transhumanism. Is an international intellectual movement supporting the use of science and technology to improve human mental and physical characteristics and capacities. And it basically says that human problems can be improved with bioengineering, with biotechnology, and other things. There is also something called a singularitarian thinking. You got to remember these terms because we'll probably quiz you on them. Singularitarianism is a philosophy and a social movement defined by the belief that a technological singularity, in other words, the creation of kind of a super intelligence based on technology, is a likely possibility in the near future or medium-term future, and that deliberate action should be taken to ensure that the technological singularity occurs in a way that benefits mankind and humankind. So these are some sort of heavy thinking things. Medvedev, as you can see here, goes through and talks about the past, present, immediate future, advanced future, before singularity. Then you get this bringing together of technology and the taking over of everything, and then after that a period when we've integrated human beings and technology in such a way that it's you know, all kind of functioning very well. There are some technology forecasts, such as the NISTEP in Japan, which is a National Institute for Science and Technology. They've had some pretty successful predictions. People working at home using TV, telephones, and faxes, and so on. Observational data from probes around Neptune and Pluto, and so on. Optical communication technology that is much better than copper, which would be fiber optics, and so on. External fertilization or an artificial womb, and other things such as the development of an artificial ear. The prediction was made in 2007, and these things, I'm sorry, it was achieved in 2007, and the forecasts were from the 70s and early 80s. And so the combined success rate of predictions on these things was about 64 to 71%. These are very narrow, specific things that NISTEP predicted, and they turned out to be fairly accurate on that. I remind you that the more narrow your predictions are about certain things, the more likely it is you're going to get it right. And also the time frame. Again, you know, if it's a long time frame, you're probably not going to get a very accurate prediction. Let's take a look at a couple of other things real quickly here that are kind of interesting. What hinders predictions? Well, personal biases, for example, knowledge in only one narrow domain or field, for example, only biology, public administration, climatology, and so on, would narrow how well you predict because you don't understand the other difficulties. The horizon problem, ability to predict short term only, and future shock, the emotional reaction towards radical changes which may color things. There are some methodological biases too. Let me just mention those really quickly. The single factor versus multiple factor forecast is a huge issue. And I'm asking you, is climate change or is anthropomorphics, human impact on beaches, reefs, climate, the oceans, and so on, is that a single factor error in forecasting coastal and ocean futures? Do we sometimes just use one measure and then not get it very, very well? Let me also show you some predictions about the future that, really affect how we think about it.
The sun, for millions of years, the source of life. But for one planet, the source of its demise. The temperatures climbed. The vast fields of ice at its poles melted, and the oceans rose. Centuries later, few people remain on this planet once called Earth. Among them, a man who still searches, a woman who still hopes, and a small child who carries the secret to a new beginning. In this place they know only as Water World.
Well, I want to thank Universal Studios for allowing us to use the official trailer from Waterworld. But there you can see an Armageddon view of how things work. And yet it is the dry earth, if you remember the movie, that is the great value. The sea and the ocean is kind of what went wrong, and the cities are all underwater and so on. And now there is a search for dry land. So just a finishing kind of little comment here. We are going to talk about this a little bit, but be aware that popular culture, things like movies, things like Waterworld, which is why we call this class Waterworld Revisited, movies like Jaws have a huge impact in essentially creating a kind of mental image about the past, the future, what is going to happen. And I think with the projections about oceans and coastal zones and climate change and so on, we have to be aware that culture influences very much. Also, the actual existing general culture of society. For example, if you live in India, or if you live in a coastal area of Africa, or on the shore of New Zealand or Mexico or Malaysia, your view of nature, the future, and sort of what's good, what's bad, what we should be doing, what we should be concerned about, is likely to be very different. So